Thereafter, the wizards of Ireland were summoned to them, and their leeches and charioteers and smiths and farmers and brehons. They held speech with them in secret. Then Nuada inquired of the sorcerer, whose name was Mathchan, what power could he wield. He answered that through his contrivance he would cast the mountains of Ireland on the Fuvra, and roll their summits against the ground. And he declared to them that the 12 chief mountains of the land of Éireann would support the Tuatha De Danann in battling for them, to wit, Slieve Lecha and Jenna Ulluth and the Mourne Mountains, and Bree Rui and Slieve Bloom, and Slieve Snechta, Sleamish, and Bly Slieve, and Nimthen, and Slieve Mochu Belgathon, and Shegish, and Cruchru Aigle. Then he asks of the cupbearer, what power could he wield? He answered that he would bring the 12 chief lochs of Ireland before the Fuvra, and they would not find water therein, whatever thirst might seize them. These are those lochs: Jeargloch, Loch Lunach, Loch Corruv, Loch Ree, Loch Mask, Strangford Loch, Loch Leach, Loch Neach, Loch Nay, Loch Foyle, Loch Gara, Loch Riach, Marloch. They would take themselves to the 12 chief rivers of Ireland, even Bush, Boyne, Ba, Nev, Lee, Shannon, Moy, Sligo, Erin, Finn, Liffey, Suir, and they would be hidden from the Fuvra, so that they would not find a drop therein. Drinks shall be provided for the men of Ireland, though they bide in the battle to the end of 7 years. Then said Figal, son of Mavos, their druid, I will cause 3 showers of fire to pour on the faces of the Fuvra host, and I will take out of them 2/3 of their valor and their bravery and their strength, and I will bind their urine in their own bodies, and in the bodies of their horses. Every breath that the men of Ireland shall exhale will increase the valor and bravery and strength to them. Though they bide in battle to the end of 7 years, they will not be weary in any wise. Said the Dagda, the power which ye boast, I shall wield it all by myself. It is thou art the Dagda, saith everyone. Wherefore thenceforward the name Dagda adhered to him. Then they separate from the council, agreeing to meet again that day 3 years. Now, when the provision of battle had been settled, Luch and Dagda and Ogma went to the 3 gods of Danu, and these give Luch the translation cuts of the battle, and for 7 years they were preparing for it and making their weapons. The Dagda had a house in Glen Evan in the north. Now, the Dagda had to meet a woman in Glen Evan on that day a year about the All-Hallowtide of the battle. The river Uniush of Connacht roars to the south of it. He beheld the woman in Uniush in Corin, washing herself, with one of her 2 feet at Oluth Echa to the south of the water, and the other at Los Cuan to the north of the water. 9 loosened tresses were over her head. The Dagda conversed with her, and they made a union. The bed of the couple is the name of that steed thenceforward. The woman that is mentioned here is the Morrigan, that is to say, Lamia. Then she told the Dagda that the Fuvra would land at Mag Tuired, and that he should summon Éireann's men of art to meet her at the ford of Unius, and that she would go into Skeidna to destroy Indech, son of De Donnan, the king of the Fuvra, and would deprive him of the blood of his heart and the kidneys of his valor. Now she afterward gave her 2 handfuls of that blood to the hosts that were waiting at the ford of Unius. Ford of Destruction became its name, because of the destruction of that king. Then that was done by the artists, and they chanted spells on the hosts of the Fuvra. This was a week before All-Hallowtide, and each of them separated from the other, until all the men of Ireland came together on All-Hallows Eve. 6 times 30 was their number, that is, twice every 30 in every third. Then Luch sent the Dagda to spy on the Fuvra, and to delay them until the men of Ireland should come to battle. So the Dagda went to the camp of the Fuvra, and asked them for a truce of battle. This was granted to him as he asked. Porridge is then made for him by the Fovra, and this was done to mock him, for great was his love for porridge. They fill for him the king's cauldron, 5 fists deep, into which went 80 gallons of new milk, and the like quantity of meal and fat. Goats and sheep and swine are put into it, and they are all boiled together with the porridge. They are spilt for him into a hole in the ground, and Indech told him that he would be put to death unless he consumed it all. He should eat his fill, so that he might not reproach the Fovra with inhospitality. Then the Dagda took his ladle, and it was big enough for a man and a woman to lie on the middle of it. These then are the bits that were in it, halves of salted swine, and a quarter of lard. Then said the Dagda, Good food is this, for its broth attains what its taste attains. But when he used to put the ladle full into his mouth, then he would say, It's, translation cuts, do not spoil it, says the old man. Then at the end he puts his curved finger over the broom of the hole among the mould and gravel. Sleep came upon him then after eating his porridge. Bigger than a house cauldron was his belly, so that the Fovra laughed at it. Then he went away from them to the strand of Alva. Not easy was it for the hero to move along owing to the bigness of his belly. Unseemly was his apparel, a cape to the hollow of his 2 elbows, a dun tunic around him as far as the swelling of his rump. It is, moreover, long-breasted, with a hole in the peak, 2 brogues on him of horsehide, with their hair outside. A wheeled, translation cuts, fork to carry, which required the effort of 8 men, behind him, so that its track after him was enough for the boundary ditch of a province. Wherefore it is called the track of the Dagda's club. Translation cuts. And here I must interrupt our story with a brief note. The following portions of the text are not translated by Stokes, and describe a relationship between the Dagda and the daughter of Indech, king of the Fovra. To quote Stokes here, here's omitted an account of the meeting of the Dagda and the daughter of Indech under difficulties caused by the distension of the Dagda's stomach. Much of it is obscure to me, and much of the rest is too indecent to be published in this review. The upshot is that Indech's daughter undertakes to practice her magic arts against her father's army. If you are interested in reading this section Stokes leaves untranslated, I suggest you look to Gray's translation, the more recent one described in the introduction. If you are a student, I would highly advise referring to Gray's more broadly, but especially here. Then the Fovra march until their, translation cuts, were in Skadna. The men of Ireland were in Mag Allach. Then these 2 hosts were threatening battle. The men of Ireland venture to offer battle to us, says Bress, son of Eliar, to Indech, son of Diadomnan. I give this and none, says Indech, so that their bones shall be small unless they pay tribute. Because of Luch's knowledge, the men of Ireland had made a resolution not to let him go into battle. So his 9 fosterers are left to protect him, even Tullus and Echdov and Eru, Rechtith the White and Fossith and Fedlevith, Ivor and Skiavar and Min. They feared an earthly death for the hero, owing to the multitude of his arts. Therefore they did not let him forth to the fight. Then the chiefs of the Tuatha De Danann were gathered round Luch, and he asked his smith, even Goivnu, what power he wielded for them. Not hard to say, quoth he. Though the men of Erin bide in the battle to the end of 7 years, for every spear that parts from its shaft, or sword that shall break therein, I will provide a new weapon in its place. No spear point which my hand shall forge, saith he, shall make a missing cast. No skin which it pierces shall taste life afterwards. That has not been done by Dulv, the smith of the Fovra. I am now, Translation cuts. For the Battle of Mag Tuired. And thou, O Gian Cath, said Luch, what power can you wield in sooth? Not hard to say, saith he. Every man who shall be wounded there, unless his head be cut off, or the membrane of his brain or his spinal marrow be severed, I will make quite whole in the battle on the morrow. And thou, O Craithna, says Luch to his brazier, what is thy power in the battle? Not hard to say, quoth Craithna. Rivets for their spears, and hilts for their swords, and bosses and rims for their shields. I will supply them all. And thou, O Luchta, says Luch to his right, what power wouldst thou attain in the battle? Not hard to say, quoth Luchta. All the shields and javelin shafts they require, I will supply them all. And thou, O Ogma, says Luch to his champion, what is thy power in the battle? Not hard to say, quoth he, repelling the king, and repelling 3 Enids of his friends, and capturing the battalion up to 1/3 by the men of Ireland. And thou, O Morrigan, saith Luch, what power wilt thou wield? Not hard to say, quoth she. What I shall follow I shall hunt, what I shall strike has been... Translation cuts. What I have cut shall be... Translation cuts. And ye, O sorcerers, saith Luch, what power will ye wield? Not hard to say, quoth the sorcerers. There are white souls on them, when they have been overturned by our craft, till their heroes are slain, and to deprive then of 2/3 of their might, with constraint on their urine. And ye, O cupbearers, saith Luch, what power? Not hard to say, quoth the cupbearers. We will bring a strong thirst upon them, and they will not find drink to quench it. And ye, O druids, saith Luch, what power? Not hard to say, quoth the druids. We will bring showers of fire on the faces of the Fuvra, so that they cannot look upwards, so that the warriors who are contending with them may slay them by their might. And thou, O Cabra, son of Aidin, saith Luch to his poet, what power can you wield in the battle? Not hard to say, quoth Cabra. I will make a glav diechin on them, and I will satirize them, and shame them, so that through the spell of my art they will not resist warriors. And ye, O Behula and O Giannan, saith Luch to his 2 witches, what power can ye wield in battle? Not hard to say, quoth they. We will enchant the trees and the stones and the sods of the earth, so that they shall become a host under arms against them, and shall rout them in flight with horror and affliction. And thou, O Dagda, saith Luch, what power canst thou wield on the Fuvra host in the battle? Not hard to say, quoth the Dagda. I will take the side of the men of Erin, both in mutual smiting and destruction and wizardry. Their bones under my club will be as many as the hailstones under the feet of herds of horses. Translation cuts. Where ye meet, translation cuts, on the battlefield of Moitura. So in that wise, Luch had speech as to their arts with every one of them in turn, and he strengthened and addressed his army, so that each man of them had the spirit of a king or mighty lord. Now, every day the battle was joined between the tribe of the Fuvra and the Tuatha Dé, save only that kings or princes were not delivering it, but only keen and haughty folk. Now, the Fuvra marveled at one thing which was revealed to them in the battle. Their weapons, their spears, and their swords, to wit, were blunted and broken, and such of their men as were slain used to not come on the morrow. But it was not so with the Tuatha Dé, for their weapons were blunted and broken today, they would be renewed on the morrow, because Goivnu the smith was in the forge making swords and spears and javelins. For he would make those weapons by 3 turns. Then Luchta the right would make the spear shafts by 3 chippings, and the 3rd chipping was a finish, and would set them in the ring of the spear. When the spearheads were struck in the side of the forge, he would throw the rings with the shafts, and it was needless to set them again. Then Credna the brazier would make the rivets by 3 turns, and would cast the rings of the spears to them, and it was needless to, translation cuts, before them, and thus they used to cleave together. This, then, is what used to put fire into the warriors who were slain there, so that they were swifter on the morrow, because Cath and his 2 sons, even Ochtriel and Miach and his daughter, Erveth, were singing spells over the well named Slana. Now their mortally wounded men were cast into it as they would be slain. They were alive when they would come out. Their mortally wounded became whole through the might of the chant of the 4 leeches who were about the well. Now, that was harmful to the Fuvra, so they told a man of them to inspect the battle and the custom of the Tuatha Dé, namely, Ruathon, son of Bres, and of Brich, the Dagda's daughter, for he was a son and a grandson of the Tuatha Dé. Then he related to the Fuvra the work of the smith and the wright and the brazier and the 4 leeches who were around the well. He was sent again to kill one of the artists, even Gwaivnu. From him he begged a spear, its rivets from the brazier and its shaft from the wright, so that all was given to him as he asked. Now there was a woman there grinding the weapons, even Cron, mother of Fianluch. She it is that ground Ruathon's spear. Now the spear was given to Ruathon by a chief, wherefore the name a chief's spear is still given to weavers' beams in Erin. Now, after the spear had been given to him, Ruathon turned and wounded Gwaivnu, but he plucked the spear out and cast it at Ruathon so that it went through him, and he died in the presence of his father in the assembly of the Fuvra. Then Brich comes and bewailed her son. She shrieked at first. She cried at last. So then, for the first time, crying and shrieking were heard in Erin. Now it is that Brich who invented a whistle for signalling at night. Then Gwaivnu went into the well, and he became whole. There was a warrior with the Fuvra, even Ochtrielach, son of Indech, son of De Domnun, son of the Fuvra king. He told the Fuvra that each man of them should bring a stone of the stones of Dros to cast into the well of Slan in Achith Abla to the west of Moitura, to the east of Loch Arbach. So they went, and a stone for each man was brought on the well, wherefore the cairn made is called Ochtrielach's cairn. But another name for that well is Loch Luvna, for Cath used to put into it one of every herb, luv, that grew in Erin. Now, when the meeting of the great battle came, the Fuvra marched out of their camp outside, and formed themselves into strong, indestructible battalions. Not a chief nor man of powers of them was without a harbuk against his skin, a helmet on his head, a broad, sounding spear in his right hand, a heavy, sharp sword on his belt, a firm shield on his shoulder. To attack the Fuvra host on that day was striking a head against a cliff, was a hand in a serpent's nest, was a face up to fire. These were the kings and chiefs that were heartening to the host of the Fuvra, namely Balor, son of Doth, son of Naid, Bres, son of Alatha, Tuiri tot Vulach, son of Lovos, Gaul and Irgol, Lonskin Lov, son of Lomglunach, Indech, son of Dedonan, king of the Fuvra, Ochtrielach, son of Indech, Omna and Bagna, Latha, son of Delbeth. On the other side, the Tuatha Dé Danann arose and left his 9 comrades keeping Luch, and they marched to the meeting of the battle. Then, when the battle follows, Luch escaped from the keeping in which he was, as his charioteer, so that it was he who was in front of the battalion of the Tuatha Dé. So then a keen and cruel battle was fought between the tribe of the Fuvra and the men of Ireland. Luch was heartening the men of Ireland so that they should fight the battle fervently, so that they should not be any longer in bondage. For it was better for them to find death in protecting their fatherland than to bide under bondage and tribute as they had been. Wherefore then Luch sang his chant below as he went round the men of Erin on one foot with one eye closed. Ard Oltroi Cath Cavartan. Translation of the poem does not continue. The hosts uttered a great shout as they entered the battle. Then they came together, and each of them began to smite the other. Many beautiful men fell there in the stall of death. Great slaughter and the grave lying that was there. Pride and shame were there side by side. There was anger and indignation. Abundant was the stream of blood there over the skin of young warriors, mangled by the hands of eager men while fleeing the danger, for translation cuts. Harsh was the translation cuts and translation cuts of the heroes and the champions, mutually fending their spears and their shields and their bodies, when the others were smiting them with spears and with swords. Harsh, moreover, was the thunder that was there throughout the battle, the shouting of the warriors and the clashing of the shields, the flashing and whistling of the glaives and the ivory-hilted swords, the rattling and jingling of the quivers, the sounds of winging the darts and the javelins, and the crashing of the weapons. The ends of their fingers and of their feet almost met in mutual striking, owing to the slipperiness of the blood under the feet of the soldiers. They would fall from their upright posture and beat their heads together as they sat. A battle was upheaved, gory, shivering, crowded, sanguinary, and then the river Unshen ran in corpses of foes. Then Nua the Silverhand and Macha, daughter of Iarnvas, fell by Balor, grandson of Naid, and Casmail fell by Octrialach, son of Indech. Luch and Balor of the piercing eye met in battle. An evil eye had Balor. That eye was never opened, save only on a battlefield. 4 men used to lift up the lid of the eye with a polished handle, which passed through its lid. If an army looked at that eye, though they were many thousands in number, they could not resist a few warriors. Whence had it that poisonous power? His father's druids were concocting charms. He came and looked over the window, and the fume of the concoction came under it, so that the poison of the concoction afterwards came on the eye that looked. Then he and Luch meet. Translation cuts. Lift up mine eyelid, my lad, says Balor, that I may see the blabberer who is conversing with me. The lid is raised from Balor's eye. Then Luch cast a slingstone at him, which carried the eye through his head. And so it was his own army that looked at it. And it fell on the host of the Fuvra, and thrice 9 of them died beside it, so that the crowns of their heads came against the breasts of Indech, son of Deadomnan, and a rush of blood sprang over his lips. Says Indech, let Luch, half-green my poet, be summoned to me. Half-green he was from the ground to the crown of his head. Luch goes to the king. Make known to me, says Indech, who has flung this cast on me. Then the Morrigan, daughter of Iarnvas, came, and was heartening the Tuatha Dé to fight the battle fiercely and fervently. So then she sang this lay below. Kings, arise to the battle. Translation cuts. Thereafter, the battle became a rout, and the Fuvra were beaten into the sea. The champion, Olgma, son of Alatha, and Indech, son of Deadomnan, the king of the Fuvra, fell in single combat. Luch Halfgreen besought Luch for quarter. Give me my 3 wishes, says Luch. Thou shalt have them, says Luch. Till doom I will ward off from Ireland all plundering by the Fuvra, and what, translation cuts, at the end of the world for every ailment. So Luch was spared. Then he sang to the gale the decree of fastening. Giveth Foss. Translation cuts. Then Luch said he would bestow names on Luch's 9 chariots, because of the quarter that had been given to him. So Luch told him to name them. Luch answered and said, Luch da Achnav. Translation cuts. Query, what are the names of the charioteers who are in them? Meithol, Meithon, Moth. Translation cuts. What are the names of the rods that were in their hands? Not hard to say. Fes, Res, Roches, etc. What are the names of the horses? Khan, Doriza, etc. Query, what is the number of the slain? Says Loch to Loch. I know not the peasants and rabble. As to the number of the Fuvro lords and nobles, and champions and kings' sons and overkings, I know, even 5,063 men, 2,350s, 4,9,009 times 5, 8,8, 4,7, 4,6, 8,5, 42, including Naid's grandson. That is the number of the slain, of the Fuvro overkings and high nobles who fell in the battle. Howbeit, as to the number of peasants and common people and rabble, and folk of every art besides, who came in company with the great army, for every champion and every high chieftain and every overking of the Fuvra came with his host to battle, so that all fell there, both his freemen and his slaves. We reckon only a few of the servants of the overkings. This, then, is the number that I have reckoned of these, as I beheld. 777 men. Translation cuts. Together with Sav Unchanach, son of Cabra Kok. Son was he of a servant of Indech, son of Dedomnan, that is, a son of the servant of the Fuvra king. As to what fell besides of half-men and of, translation cuts, who reached not the heart of battle, those are in no wise numbered till we see the number of stars in heaven, sands of sea, flakes of snow, dew on lawn, hailstones, grass under the feet of herds, and the son of Lear's horses in a sea storm. Thereafter, Loch and his comrades found Bress, son of Latha, unguarded. He said, "It is better to give me quarter than to slay me." "What then will follow from that?" says Loch. "If I be spared," says Bress, "the keen of Erin will always be in milk." "I will set this forth to our wise men," says Loch. Hence Loch went to Maeltana Molrethach, and said to him, "Shall Bress have quarter for giving constant milk to the keen of Erin?" "He shall not have quarter," says Maeltana. "He has no power over their age or their offspring, though he can milk them so long as they are alive." Loch said to Bress, "That does not save thee. Thou hast no power over their age and their offspring, though thou canst milk them." Said Bress, "For both the," translation cuts. "Is there aught else that will save thee, O Bress?" says Loch. "There is, in sooth. Tell your Brehon that for sparing me, the men of Ireland shall reap a harvest in every quarter of the year." Said Loch to Maeltana, "Shall Bress be spared for giving the men of Ireland a harvest of corn in every quarter?" "This has suited us," saith Maeltana, "the spring for ploughing and sowing, and the beginning of summer for the end of the strength of the corn, and the beginning of autumn for the end of the ripeness of corn, and for reaping it, winter for consuming it." "That does not rescue thee," saith Loch to Bress. "For both the," translation cuts, saith he. "Less than that rescues thee," saith Loch. "What?" says Bress. "How shall the men of Ireland plough? How shall they sow? How shall they reap? After making known these three things, thou wilt be spared." "Tell them," says Bress, "that their ploughing be on a Tuesday, their casting seed into the field be on a Tuesday, their reaping on a Tuesday." So that through that stratagem Bress was let go free. In that fight, then, Ogma the champion found Orna, the sword of Tethra, a king of the Fuvra. Ogma unsheathed the sword and cleansed it. Then the sword related whatsoever had been done by it, for it was the custom of swords at that time, when unsheathed, to set forth the deeds that had been done by them, and therefore swords are entitled to the tribute of cleansing them after they have been unsheathed. Hence, also, charms are preserved in swords thenceforward. Now, the reason why demons used to speak from weapons at that time was because weapons were worshipped by human beings at that epoch, and the weapons were among the safeguards of that time. It is of that sword that Loch Lethglas sang this lay. Athmel Murna Uth. Translation cuts. Now, Loch and the Dagda and Olgama pursued the Fuvra, for they had carried off the Dagda's harper, whose name was Uathna. Then they reached the banqueting house, in which were Bress, son of Elatha, and Elatha, son of Delbeath. There hung the harp on the wall. That is the harp which the Dagda had bound the melodies, so that they sounded, not until by his call he summoned them forth, when he said this below. Come, Dravla, come Cor Cathor, come summer, come winter, mouths of harps and bags and pipes. Now, that harp had two names, even Dur-Davla, oak of two greens, and Cor Cathor, four-angled music. Then the harp went forth from the wall, and kills 9 men, and came to the Dagda. And he played for them the 3 things whereby harpers are distinguished, to wit, sleep strain and smile strain and wail strain. He played wail strain to them, so that their tearful women wept. He played smile strain to them, so their women and children laughed. He played sleep strain to them, and the hosts fell asleep. Through that sleep the 3 of them escaped unhurt from the Fuvra, though these desired to slay them. Then the Dagda brought with him, translation cuts, through the lowing of the heifer, which had been given to him for his labour. For when she called her calf, all the cattle of Ireland which the Fuvra had taken as tribute grazed. Now, after the battle was won and the corpses cleared away, the Morrigan, daughter of Ernvas, proceeded to proclaim that battle and the mighty victory which had taken place to the royal heights of Ireland, and to its fairy hosts, and its chief waters, and its river mouths. And hence it is that Bathov also describes high deeds. Hast thou any tale? Saith every one to her. And then she said, Peace up to heaven, heaven down to earth, earth under heaven, strength in every one. Translation cuts. Then, moreover, she was prophesying the end of the world, and foretelling every evil that would be therein, and every disease, and every vengeance. Wherefore she sang this lay below. I shall not see a world that will be dear to me. Summer without flowers, keen without milk, women without modesty, men without valor, captures without a king. Translation cuts. Woods without mast, sea without produce. Translation cuts. Wrong judgments of old men, false precedents of Brehon, every man a betrayer, every boy a reaver. Son will enter his father's bed, father will enter his son's bed. Everyone will be his brother's brother-in-law. Translation cuts. An evil time. Son will deceive his father. Daughter will deceive her mother. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I did when I first read it as a teenager. It is one of the first stories from medieval Ireland that I had the chance to read, and it is one of several things that have led me to sitting here recording these episodes. What I want to discuss here in the second part of our episode is what I think is perhaps the most interesting dimension to this story, the political motivation that lies behind its creation. Now, for those of you who are familiar with broader Indo-European mythological trends, Cath Maige Tuired might seem familiar to you as the War of the Gods motif. For those of you unfamiliar with who the Indo-Europeans are, they are a hypothesized early culture that is the functional, I suppose, linguistic and cultural forebearer of various European cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, and cultures from the Indian subcontinent. This has been shown rather convincingly on linguistic grounds, and then from linguistic grounds, some cultural elements and cultural connections have been suggested. One of these having been this War of the Gods motif, that there's a conflict of the gods between, let's say, positive figures and negative figures. Other examples of this motif that some of you may be familiar with, even if you aren't aware of this Indo-European motif, are the theogony from Greece, describing, amongst other things, the war between the Theoi, the gods, and the Titans. Other examples are, and please pardon my literally non-existent Hittite pronunciation, the Epic of Kumarbi, a Hittite story describing a dynastic struggle between the gods, primarily between the Storm King and his father, and the war between the Aesir and the Vanir, which is referenced in a number of Norse sources. Reading these tales as part of a single Indo-European nexus, that these stories all go back to a shared ancestral origin, was particularly popular in the earlier and middle period of the previous century. But, as time and scholarship has progressed, these links have become more unstable. While the theogony does appear to have been influenced or maybe connected to the Epic of Kumarbi, how Indo-European the Epic of Kumarbi is, as an originally Hurrian tale that the Hittites adopted, the Hurrians being a non-Indo-European people, might be questioned. In turn, recent scholarship from Norse studies, such as Rudolf Smirk's article The Vanir an Obituary, has challenged the idea that the Aesir-Vanir War is an ancient tale, but instead was one produced in the medieval period. Similarly, Cath Maige Tuired has been rather convincingly argued to be a story produced by medieval Ireland, talking about a very medieval Irish problem: the Vikings. This interpretation of Cath Maige Tuired has been discussed for some time by several different scholars. For those of you who are interested in reading some more, let me offer a brief but incomplete list of these discussions. McKenna discusses it as part of his article, The Influence of the Vikings on Celtic Literature, published in 1962, in the Proceedings of the First International Congress on Celtic Studies. John Carey has discussed it in his articles Myth and Mythography in Cath Maige Tuired, mentioned previously, and The Nature of the Fovera, the Dark Other in Medieval Irish Imagination, from 2021, in Myth and History in Celtic and Scandinavian Traditions. Kim McCone has also discussed it in the delightfully named article A Tale of Two Ditties, Poet and Satirist in Cath Maige Tuired, published in 1989, in Sages, Saints, and Storytellers. While there is obviously some variation between the specifics offered by each of these articles, and because I'm sure that if I were to summarize each independently I would risk boring some of you to death, I'll give a brief explanation of the broad strokes. Cath Maige Tuired is anti-Norse political propaganda. The Fovera, foreign invaders who come from isles to the north, who have put Ireland under tribute and taxation, extracting a tithe of grain, milk, and children, are the Norse. Not directly. These are not the medieval Irish presenting the Aesir as monstrous invaders. Balor is not Odin, and the individual Fovera kings are not named after specific Norse kings. However, they are filling the exact function of the Norse. The Tuatha De Danann, you may not be shocked to realize, represent the Irish, repeatedly referred to as the men of Ireland in the tale, if you may remember. Here they are oppressed peoples, who band together to overthrow their oppressors, and fight a single, great, legendary battle to oust these northern invaders. Cath Maige Tuired would not be the only story written in this time on this topic. There are two notable other tales, which we may return to in future seasons, though they are rather exceptionally long. Cogad Galal Rigalv, which describes a mythologized version of the Battle of Clontarf, where the battle lines were more clearly Irish against Norse, instead of the rather messy tangle of alliances it was in reality, and Cathri of Kelachan Cashel, about King Kelachan's broadly fictional wars with the Norse, which were produced in the same period. Further evidence of the political nature of Cath Maige Tuired is in the relationship between the Fovera and the Tuatha De. As discussed by John Carey, these two groups have intertwined ancestries, with, for instance, the Dagda, Ogma, and Nuadu all being sons of Elatha, Bress's father. Similarly, in Levogavada Éireann, the figure Nade is one of the Tuatha De Danann, while here he is one of Balor's forebears. Further, the role of the Fovera as malignant figures that take grain and milk is not unique to them. Consider our previous story, where the Dagda was taking these things from humanity before a pact was made with him. Considering the close genealogical links between these groups, and how both could be malignant, it might be the case that the line between these groups was originally not as distinct as we see it in Cath Maige Tuired, but it may be the product of the necessity of the moment, where the nature of propaganda requires the good local Irish population to be oppressed by, and eventually overthrow, malignant raiders from across the sea to the north. To wrap up, I would hasten to add that just because Cath Maige Tuired is produced in this very specific political context does not mean it lacks value. All art is political, and as such, all works of medieval Irish literature have political elements, though likely not all as central as Cath Maige Tuired. Occasionally, we lack the historic context of the work to understand what these political elements are, but in this case we do. Additionally, while it does not appear to be a profoundly ancient story, with the War of the Gods motif on far less stable Indo-European footing than it was a century ago, that does not mean there aren't any old elements to it. But that is a topic for a different day. If you're interested in learning more on that topic as a member of the general public, I would direct you to John Carey's The Mythological Cycle of Medieval Irish Literature. That is all for now, but you shall hear from me again soon. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me at irishlegendspodcast@gmail.com.